Hey, good afternoon. How's everybody?
Good afternoon.
Yeah, how are you, Yusuf?
I'm good. I
Good
wasn't
afternoon,
Good
Professor.
afternoon.
Hey, good
um
afternoon, Eva.
I
So
was
only, yeah,
Good afternoon.
last class I
go on.
wasn't because my Wi-Fi wasn't acting right, so I wasn't able to join or send an email.
Oh, you are not.
Yeah, I
Okay.
wasn't in class, but I saw what you had said to go to YouTube and watch the previous video.
Okay, good, good. So, Yusuf, are you like recent register or you
No,
were
my
originally on the huh?
I was
You were
originally
recent.
no, I was
You were
originally in.
originally
Yeah,
on the roster, yeah, before the beginning of the semester. So
yeah,
yeah, then you must have got, definitely all those,
the email.
emails from me,
Yeah,
right? So as
emails.
long
Yeah.
as you follow the instructions in the email and comply with it, you would have no problem,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
yeah, we have currently, let's see, 9 people in the collaborate. 9 people. Let me quickly just check how many
Professor?
people are in. Yeah, who was? Oh, Stacy.
Stacy.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
School today to get your book for your class, and it's not in yet.
Oh, yeah. Well, did you check with the bookstore, BMCC bookstore?
Yeah, that's where I went.
And
It's
they
not
said
available
it's,
online either.
yeah.
Yes.
Well,
And
that.
it's in back order.
Yeah, it's on back.
Oh,
Try to get.
okay. Look, look, look.
Yeah, I can't
No,
get it
it's
either.
not available online either. Um, that's okay. I mean, you don't. The book is not available just yet. There's nothing you can do about it. I mean, when they get the book, when the books are available, that's you get it then. That's the time because if it is not available yet, the only other option is you can get ebook, right? But that's the regular edition. An ebook will be like, basically around $130. It would be more expensive than the custom book. And the custom book has, is physical book and also the access code to their online platform. But either way, that's fine. You can get an ebook if you can afford $130. You can, but then there's no physical book, right? Ebook is just so we have currently. I mean, for while we are on the first topic, while we are still on the first topic, you don't need the book. Uh, you don't need the book that urgently because the first topic is mainly my own material, my own original material. Um, so it's not exactly in the book. Only the last part of the first topic will have some, um, uh, some, overlapping portion in the book, first chapter of the book. But the first topic is my original material. So let's see. We have currently we have like 12 people, 11 except myself, and in the let me check the discussion board. Today's forum, there are only 8 people in today's forum. So please remember the first order of business is to go to the discussion board and um, do your attendance report because you must establish um, your physical proof of attendance within the first 30 minutes to validate your presence, okay, to validate your attendance. I mean, you will be recognized as present only if your attendance report is made within the first 30 minutes. So if you haven't done it yet, and I think I'm not sharing my screen yet, so let me share my screen. You can see my screen now. So you see this is so it says 12, but two of those postings are mine. So that means effectively there are only 10 people here, and in our 11, and two more are joining, right? 11 people, and two more people were just joining. So we have still 11 here. So don't forget, please do the attendance report. That's the first order of business, right? I also made it very clear in the announcement. You got this. I believe you got this announcement. I mean, so far there are only like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then seven postings in the announcements, right? 7. And this one, this is the 6th announcement, and it clearly says the first order of business is to establish the physical proof of your attendance in the discussion board, right? So that's the first thing you must do, and then you come to the collaborate, okay? Now, anyway, we have, so in our last class, we were just wrapping up why we need to annualize the holding period return, because it's standardized. Annualized return is basically standardized. It's all return on money, right? All return on investments are basically expressed as annual return, right? And the holding periods may vary, from a few minutes, few seconds, or to 10 years, 10 decades, So there's no way you can compare all these, different holding period returns. So then you cannot directly compare them. So then we need to standardize them. And if you annualize it, then that's the standardized return on investment. And basically, all interest rate, if you look at interest rates are always APR, annual percentage rate. It's expressed as annual, always, regardless of, your loan term. If you have loans are usually long, long term, longer than 1 year. But there is, short-term loan, in the financial market, short-term loan market is called the money market, where you just, it's usually discounting, usually, you have promissory notes, you discount it, and the maturity on the promissory note is, short-term, less than 1 year, but generally around 60 days, at most. So in that case, it's like a short-term loan, and the discount rate and the interest rate on, for example, promissory note has 10% interest rate. What does that mean? If you have 60-day promissory note, that means someone bought, you are a seller, and the buyer gave you a 60-day promissory note with 10% interest. 10% means annual rate. I mean, promissory notes are used only in B2B, business to business, and if a buyer, which is a business, issued a $1 million promissory note for 60 days, that means they bought $1 million worth of goods from you, and you are also a business, not an individual. And then they, instead of paying $1 million in cash, they paid with promise, 60-day promissory note, meaning, it can be cashed in 60 days. I mean, you present it to them, you bring it back to them, you present it to them in 60 days, and you will collect $1 million plus interest for 60 days. And when it says, interest rate is 10%, that doesn't mean, 10% of $1 million. That means, it's annual, on annual basis. I mean, if the length of the promissory note was 1 year, then yeah, 10%. Of course, 10% would be $100,000. 10% of 1 million, right? So this is obviously not the case because you are holding it for 60 days. Then for 60 days, based on that 10% APR, you just make an adjustment. 60 day is, 60 over 365, right? Or 60 over 360. I mean, you might wonder, isn't 1 year 365? Why 360? But that's another story. They use, also 360 days, which is called ordinary interest year. 365 is called, exact interest year. So it's another story. And you, let's say, then making an adjustment is simple. 60 over 360, right? 60 over 360 is 1/6. So then 1/6 of 10%. Just make that adjustment, and then that's the if you take it to the if you present it to the issuer, that's what you get. But then the bottom line is, I had to, I digressed again, but then that's, to explain, why, APR is the basis. Everything, all interest rates, all returns are expressed as, annual percentage rate. Okay, so everything must be, okay, Albina said, I can't hear you. My microphone is on. How about everybody else?
Yes, I can hear you, Professor.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. So, Albina or Albina, please, I think it is your speaker. Check your speaker setting. Please check your speaker volume. Other people have no problem hearing me. Okay, so please check your speaker volume. Okay, now, so where was I? Now, then annualization means, I believe I also talked about this last time. It's annual data and annualized data are not the same thing, because annual data means, they already exist in annual annual format, right? But annualized means, what was originally not in annual form, you turn it into, you convert it into annualized. So basically, average, annual average, right? But then when we talk about average, right? And I believe we talked about this in the last class when we talk. Average is not only, and most of you think of average as simple average, right? We talked about this in the last class, right? But, average is not, let me just quickly check if this was, okay, Albina, you're welcome. Now, let me just because in our last class, which was in our 31st, I don't want to repeat the same thing. Okay, so I think I will need to explain. So you might think, yeah, to annualize, all you need to do is, if your holding period, suppose you had holding period of 10 years. You were holding this security for 10 years, and then you got 240% return over 10 years, over the 10-year holding period. Then you might think, oh, because it was 240% over 10 years, then if I just divide it by 10, wouldn't it be 20%? Wouldn't it be 24% every year? No. It's absolutely not like that. Why? Because you are completely not considering the growth effect, the growth effect of those your returns. So one thing I need to make clear is that you don't just divide it by, if your holding period, just because your holding period is n years, n meaning any random number, you don't divide it by n. Okay, why? So we have to understand that there are differences in averages. We don't most of you think of when you talk about average, you understand the average that you understand is the simple average, right? And you don't know, generally you don't know more than just the simple average. But there are different there is not only simple average, there is also weighted average, there is also geometric average. So what is weighted average and geometric average? First of all, simple average is, it's also called arithmetic average. And this is what you understand, understand as average. That means, simple average is, average is also mean. Mean is, sum of all the x. X is a random random variable, right? It's a random, data point. So xi, the subscript I means individual data, any random individual. So if I runs from 1 to n, that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If n is 12, that means 1 through 12. So that means there are 12 data points. 12 data points, right? X1, X2, X3, X4, all the way to X12. So if you have these 12 data points, so n data points, right? What you do is you simply sum all of those data points, right? Also called observations, because data comes from observation. You have to observe, this variable, the movement of this variable, random variable, and then so you sum everything and divide it by number of data points or number of observations. So that's simple average. But then simple average can be used. It is wrong to use simple average when we are talking about the something like price of the stock growing over time. Why? Price of a stock or any financial asset. Let's say we have 12 years. You have 10 years. You have your holding period is 10 years. Then think about it. Price in year 2 is the result of the growth from year 1, right? And then price of year 3 is the result of the growth from price of year 2, which is the result of the growth of price from price of year 1. So think about it. the final price at time 10, is the result of the growth from time 9, right? Price at time 9, which is the result of growth in time 7, and successively, right? Like from the previous price. So in other words, in that case, these data points, the price data, are not independent from each other. They are all correlated. You understand? What price of the price at time t is dependent on price at time t minus 1, right? One period before. And price at time t plus 1 is dependent on price at time t, which is again dependent on price at time t minus 1, which is then dependent on correlated with the price at time t minus 2. So when there is a correlation between the data points, and which is usually through time, the correlation runs through time, so then you can't use simple average. Simple average is used when there is no correlation between the data points, such as, and these data points were all collected at the same time, right? So it's basically static data, right? At static time. It's also called, synchronic, or it's also called latitudinal data, latitudinal, not longitudinal, latitudinal data, also called cross-sectional data, cross-sectional. Now, one example is, if I were to find the average height of the people in this class, right? And let's say there are 25 people in this class. What do? I will take, height, individual height data, right? I will measure your heights, and these individual height data are collected at the same time, right? I mean, this is the height of, there may be a couple of days difference because I will have to physically visit you, and unless everyone is all in the same place. So sometimes, the data may be, the data may have, a small time lag, but, the difference is insignificant because you don't shoot up like 2 inches per day, right? You just, everyone, basically this year, your height will pretty much hold, unless you're shooting up like 2-3 inches a year. But basically, I would, if I were to take, if I want to find average height, I would collect this data in a single day, right? The same day. And then what do? I add them up and divide it by 25, the number of data points or number of observations. In this case, your heights, think about it, your heights are not correlated with anyone. Your height is not dependent on my height, or my height isn't dependent on his height or her height, and her height is not dependent on his height. All these data points are independent, right? Independent of each other, uncorrelated with each other. And it's called cross-sectional data because I'm looking at I'm trying to look at the cross-section of this class, right? But then the opposite concept of simple average is weighted average. And simple average is also called arithmetic average. And then the opposite concept of arithmetic average is geometric average. And you might wonder, how, hold on.
I see you inside, right?
I'm not at work.
Yo, bro, I see you inside. Like, no, bro.
This nigga.
look,
Yeah, what?
Boy, you better be inside, right?
If you're not speaking to me or to the class, please, mute your microphone. So then you might, isn't simple average the same thing as arithmetic average? Yes, they are the same thing. But then how come, the opposite concept of one thing is weighted average, the opposite concept of the other thing is geometric average? Actually, Uh, I just had to put geometric average here because otherwise, there's no other space to put it. But this isn't entirely wrong because geometric average is also a kind of weighted average. Okay, geometric average is time-weighted average. So it's not entirely wrong. I just needed to because I put two lines. I needed two lines. I wanted to um, I wanted to avoid using the same term in two lines. So what is the weighted average? Weighted average is, because this is all explained in the main lecture videos. I'm not going to go into detail, but basically, your GPA is a very good example of. It's a very typical example of weighted average. Why? Let's take a look at. Let's think about this example. Let's say you took, 4 classes last semester. You took English, math, and ethnic studies and art, and you got B plus B, A minus A in those courses. And these letter grades, their corresponding numerical values, their numerical values are 3.5, B plus is 3.5, right? B is 3.2, A minus 3.7, A 4, right? So you might think, oh, so my GPA must be, average of all these numbers. And for you, so far, average means only simple average. So you add them up and divide it by 4. Then you get 3.6. And then, but this is wrong. This is wrong. Why? You cannot take simple average. Why? Because their weights are different, right? Have you ever wondered why all English classes are 3 credits and why all math classes are 4 credits? There's no 3-credit math course. It's all 4. And some, not all of them, but some ethnic studies are 2, and some art, music are 1. It's hard to find 1-credit art or music classes these days, but at least they are 2. But in the past, there were one credit. They were 1-credit courses. And what does these credits mean? 3-credit course. 3 credit means you meet 3 hours a week. Well, look, we are 3-credit course. Finance 100 is 3-credit course, and we meet 3 hours a week, right? And so that means there is an art class that meets just once a week. And then math is always 4 credits, and they meet 4 hours per week. And why are they so different? I mean, why is math has to meet 4 hours? It all depends on. Think about it. These number of hours. Why do they meet 4 hours per week? Whereas most classes meet 3 hours. That means that's that much important, right? That means math class. It's not sufficient to meet 3 hours a week. It simply means math requires more brain power. It requires more cognitive abilities, right? It means more brain power. Math requires more brain power, right? It's simple and straightforward. Math requires more brain power than English or history. Math requires way more, brain power than art. So that's all. That means, that's the weight, and weight means the importance, right? That means math is that more important than other classes. That's why they gave 4 credits. That's why you have to meet 4 hours a week. So then, if they have different importances, right, different weights, then you cannot simply add them up and divide it by 4, because doing that means you're treating them all the same. You cannot, but they cannot be treated all the same, right? So then, what do? You weight them. You weight these, numerical values, right? These grade points by their credits. That means, You multiply this, you multiply this to this, multiply this to this, this to this, this to this, and this column is showing you the product of those two numbers. And if you are quick, you would already understand, oh, what is this number? Oh, this times this is this times this is this. So this is the product of those two numbers, right? So these are the weighted values. And then sum of that, right? If you add them up, that's sum. Sum of that, you divide it by the sum of these credits. And then you get to this. That's the weighted average. Okay? Now then, what is the geometric average? So let's do this. You have, if you go to, and from the day one, I told you from the day one that you must go to, when you go to our topics folder, right? Topic 1, and then on the top you have these, files. I told you to download these files. You must absolutely download. You should have already downloaded these files. And these two are Excel files, and this is this, PowerPoint. But you got to download them, right? And you must have it open in front of you. Okay, you must have this file open in front of you, and you will have, that is an Excel file, so you will have this file in front of you. Do you have it in front of you now? Do you have it? Now, if you have it, okay, delete all these, delete everything except the initial input data. The initial input data must be there because they, without initial input, you will have to download it all over again. But other than, except the initial input data, delete everything else. Okay, delete everything else. And even these two. Okay. So let's now think about it. So these are house values, home prices, house values, between the end of 2005 and the end of 2016. These house values are all collected at the end of the year. And the reason is that, and suppose you bought the house at the end of 2005 and you sold it at the end of 2016. This is just for the sake of our thought experiment, because just to simplify our assumption, because nobody, think about it, it doesn't, you don't necessarily buy the house at the end of the year. I mean, it can happen at any time, at any point during the year, right? But, just to simplify our assumption, we'll just assume that, and another thing is, and I probably talked about this before, that the during the take a look at the stock market, and in the stock market during the day, right? The stock market opens at 9:30 a.m. In the U.S., stock market opens at 9:30 a.m. and closes at 4 p.m. So during the day's trading, there will be 4 price points. And let's say, we have, we're looking at, let's take a look at, I normally, like, I'd like to look at, Apple, but let's do, so this is 1 year, Tesla's, price movement, but and it's daily data. So let's say, this is when, okay, this point, let's say that's, whatever date it is. Okay, this is August 2nd, right? On August 2, right, August 2nd, there are 4 price points. You can tell. I'm not going to move my mouse because, if I move my mouse, then it will. But in the box to the upper left, you will see high, low, close. Again, but you can see 4 price points: open, high, low, close. What does that mean? That's the price. 700 is the price at the opening of the market on that day, huh?
That's the price of
Right?
the open when the market opens.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
price
yeah.
closes. The high for the
Right,
day,
right.
lowest it
Yeah.
reached.
High for the day, the highest price, during the day, highest price it reached, and the lowest price it reached during the day, and the closing price at the closing. But think about it. So there are 4 price points, but the most important one is what? The most important one is
The closing for the day, so you know
closing.
when the next one comes in.
Yeah, yeah. But it doesn't matter what, what's go, it's not because of the next day. It's because that's the conclusion, right? Closing price is the conclusion of the day's trading. No matter what, no matter how high it reached during the day, it's irrelevant. The conclusion, the day closed, after all, it closed at, 7:09 on that day, right? That's the conclusion. Okay. Did we talk about this before? Did we
I
talk
think
about
so.
this?
Briefly, I think so.
Okay. Then I don't need to repeat the same thing. So think about it. If it is house value, home prices don't have so much volatility like the as the stock market, because and how home prices are not as volatile, right? But they generally behave more predictably. But the and then they don't frequently change every day, or they relatively they are steadier, and they change relatively slowly. But anyway, either way, so we measure, you can also take the home price data monthly or quarterly, right, or weekly. But most commonly, because we have 11-year time frame, we take the data at the end of the year, because that's the conclusion of the year, right? So that's the conclusion. So just for the sake of our thought experiment, we assume that you bought the house at the end of 2005 for 150,000, and you sold the house at the end of the 2016. So that's P for $500,000. So that's P 2016, right? P sub 2016. So this is, P sub 2016, right? And this is P. This is how the time subs. This is how you use the time subscript, right? Price in 2005. Okay. Then we can easily find the holding period return, because holding period return by definition is what? We know already the definition of the holding period return, right? This is the definition of, so P 2016 minus P 2005, okay? And plus, additional cash flow during the holding period divided by P 2005. So let's do this. So basically, it's
So question, Professor. So that would look like
yeah.
500,000 minus 150,000 plus. Well, we don't have the sum of the cash flow yet, but it's 171.6.
Yeah. But let's think about two. Let's pose two scenarios. Okay, let's pose two scenarios. Scenario one. In scenario one is that's you buy this house and use it as your home, right? So it's just mainly your home. You don't. In scenario two, you buy it as a rental property. You rent it out. So suppose you bought a like a 4-story. I mean, it doesn't have to be 4-story, but it's got 8 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms, 4 kitchens. It doesn't have to be for just a single, family. It doesn't have to be, I mean, if you're just a single person or just, or newlywed couple, or, if you're living with a partner, I mean, this house is too big for just, a single household. Then, you might think about subletting it, right? So that's the scenario 2. That's the second scenario. But in the first scenario, in scenario 1, just assume that this is just, a single family home and you just use it as your residence. In that case, there's no additional income, right? So in scenario 1, there will be only capital gains. So we, in that case, that, sum of all the cash flows, it just drops out because it's 0, right? And then in this case, we already know. And then let's also find the capital gains each year. I mean, the capital gains over 5 years. 11 years. We already know capital gains over 11 years is, this minus this is 350,000 already. We know that. I mean, this B2 minus B13 will give you already exactly 350. But we know, I mean, let's just put it here. I mean, that's capital gains, we already know, right? But also we can find capital gains this way. Annual capital gains, first, between 2016 and 2015, right? Of course, that's the end of 2015 to end of 2016. So this capital gain all, accrued. It happened in 2016. And then it's the same thing. It's going to be B3 minus B4. But, I don't want to do it tediously, because if I do it one by one, that's tedious. What I want to do is I'll just copy and drag it down. And then what is, also that thing was copied too.
What was the input you put in again, Professor? I actually missed that.
I just
B2
input the logic. Yeah, it's not even a formula. It's just the logic, right? Anybody would do that. And then it's just copy and paste. How do you copy? You can use copy command. If you go to, you can copy and then highlight the rest of it, and or in Excel, if you select a cell, then you will see the selected cell will have border, right? But the border line is broken in the southeast corner, right? The southeast corner, I call the southeast corner. And then, there, where the border line is broken, you see square dot, right? And when you bring your cursor to the square dot, it turns from that fat white cross to thin black cross, and that means Excel is ready to copy and paste. So you hold down the left mouse button gently, and then just drag it down, and the formula gets copied, right? You don't bring it all the way down here because 2005, after 2005, before 2005, there's no 2004 data, so you don't get anything there. So just drag it just down to row 12. So year by year, these are the capital gains, and you can see normally when you hover around the cell, the cursor is fat white cross, and sometimes you will see when you bring it to the border, then it turns into arrow-headed cross. That means arrowhead means arrow means direction, so it means you can move this cell, you can move this data wherever you want. Okay, but I'm not going to do that. And you can then you can find the sum of all these, and I can use auto sum, right? Okay, so in this case it won't find, because there's a gap in data. There's a gap in data. It's not going to automatically recognize the range above it as the range to sum, but then that's fine. I will sum, use equal sum, and highlight all of them, right? Highlight all of them. And that should also be 350K, isn't that right? Because year by year, if the capital gains these are annual capital gains, if you sum all of them, that must be exactly 350. Yes, it's 350K. All right, then let's find the holding period return again, because we will get this still, same 233, right? 233, but then instead of p t minus instead of p 2016 minus p 2005, which is already done here, this is already that's capital gains, and this is already the capital gains. So simply I'm going to divide that by the initial investment. There you go. So same thing. Now this time, let's think about, so then scenario 2. Let's think about scenario 2. In scenario 2, this house is too big for you, so you decided to sublet it. Then, of course, you must get a permit from, you'll have to have someone from the city housing department, someone from the housing department come in and inspect the building so that it will meet the requirement for multiple household housing, right? So let's say for the first 3 years, you didn't rent it out because you probably had to renovate, do things to meet the housing regulation. And then from you got the permit and you met all the requirements, so now you're renting it out. From year 4, you rent it out, right? In the first 2 years, your monthly rent was 1,500, 1,500, so times 12, that comes to this. And then from year 6, you raised it to by 10%. You raised the rent by 10%, so that's, and then year 6, 7, 8, $2,000 every month. So these are additional cash flows. So that's the income, right? And you can also find, some of all those cash flows, right? Some of all those cash flows here, right? I just dragged it to the right, so it copied, basically it copied, what's in the, doesn't copy the number, it copies always the formula, right? It's a stupid thing if it just copies, the number, right? The numerical value is what's on the surface, but it's the result of the formula. So so then now we can find the holding period return in scenario 2. So in scenario 2, then if you want to do it like if you want to do it like this, if you want to do it like that, then you will do P 2016 minus P 2005 and plus, and you don't need to, I don't type that in, you just click it in. You have mouse, I'm sure you all have mouse, you're using mouse, you can just click it in, right? And then sum of all the additional income. Now you have to put them all in the parentheses, because if you don't put it into the parentheses, when you divide it by this, and suppose there is no parenthesis, what's going to happen? The division will happen first. This is a common sense, right? Anybody with, at least, sixth grade common sense will know, will understand what PEMDAS is, parenthesis, exponent, multiplication, division, right? Addition, subtraction. It follows that order, right? So if you don't want the division to happen first, just D14 by B14 to happen first, then you have to put everything in the numerator in the parentheses. And then, yes, this is the holding period return for 11 years, right? In scenario 2, right? And then you want to do it simply by, okay, because we have some of all the capital gains. We have capital gains there. We have capital gains. We have some of the cash flows there. So what do? I'm gonna just use this and plus this and divide it by initial investment. Of course, you still get the same thing, right? I just try to do it in 2 ways. Now, then let's annualize it. Right? Annualize what? First, column E. What is column E? Column E is the growth rate of your house value. Right? So the growth portion, between 2016 and 2015, right? The capital gains is the growth portion, right? Isn't that right? Capital gains is the growth. From 2015 price, right? So you divide that capital gains, annual capital gains, by the previous year. I mean, that's the growth in 1 year, and this is already in percentage, right? So it's formatted as percentage already, so it's all in percentage, right? And then, and it's the same thing from there on. I mean, there was 0% growth, between 2015 and 2014. But let's, you just copy and drag it all the way down. Yeah, it's the formula. So, it's 0%, right there. Some years it was negative, and that's true. It was negative. House value went down. 2007. This is realistic because in 2007 there was housing market crisis. Housing market crisis, housing market crash. Because of predatory lending. I mean in housing market bubble was the housing market was on bubble in early 2000s, and in 2007 it popped because of the mortgage-backed securities and the anyway the
Credit defaults on the houses and the mortgages.
Right. And but actually, first thing that happened was, in 2007, housing market crashed because, they raised the interest rate. I mean, Federal Reserve had to raise interest rate. That was when Ben Bernanke was, Fed chairman, and he raised, just over 1 year period between 2006 and 2007. He raised, almost like the Fed funds rate by 5.25% or 5.5%. That was, just over 1 year period. That was, and then all the mortgage interest rates went floating rates. I mean, if you there are two types of, when you get a loan, your interest rate is already fixed. In other words, when you get a loan, you lock into the interest rate. In other words, you get a loan at 3%, then it will, for the life of the loan, it will be 3%. You don't pay, your interest rate is 3%. You don't pay any more. The interest rate doesn't change. But in the early 2000s, even leading to 2007, there were floating interest rate, which means flexible, right? They also called it adjustable rates, but that means the interest rate changes. Even that was because they were even lending to the people who had derogatory credit, and the people who had derogatory credit normally cannot get a loan, right? Because it's a huge risk for the lender. But they were even able to get the mortgage loan even without any down payment, or even very minuscule down payment. And then think about it. The interest rate went up between 2006 and 2007 by even the Fed funds rate, the benchmark rate went up by 5.5%. Then for the people who were on adjustable mortgage rate, or floating rate, flexible rate, their rates jumped up, not just by 5.5, but like 10%, or even then there's no way they can make the payment. They defaulted, and a lot of these properties were foreclosed, and then they were put on the market. And then obviously when there is too much supply of foreclosed homes, then the price drops, and then you cannot recover your original loan amount, right? $1 million home, think about it, $1 million home, right? Before the crisis, then the loan was, let's say, $950,000, right? Only $50,000 was the down payment from the borrower, and it's then the borrower cannot make the payment because the interest rate is too high now, because they had this adjustable mortgage rate.
So they would
And
default.
then bank, yeah, they will default, obviously, and the bank forecloses, and there were a lot of properties like that, right? At the time, I mean, way above normal level in the resale market. And then think about it: the bank needs to recover their loan of $950,000, right? But because there was too much supply, the prices of these homes dropped to 50% or even lower. For the buyer's perspective, this is a good time. This is the very opportune moment. But from the seller's perspective, if they sell it for below 50%, so the house value was 1 million, now it is selling below 500,000, and the loan alone was 950,000. Even if they sell, the bank is already in a loss of 450,000. You understand? Now then, this 950,000, where did it come from? 950,000, huh? Don't tell me it came from the bank, because of course bank loaned that money. But where did the bank get the 950,000?
They just put the money on the paper. They gave the loan to people
No.
who couldn't pay it.
Yeah, look, this came from the depositors. Think about it. Bank cannot loan the money that they don't. The bank cannot loan the money that's not in their reserve, right? Bank is in the business of lending money. So this loan, $950,000 loan, is not. It wasn't created out of thin air. It is somebody's deposit. You understand? It came from somebody's deposit. So then the bank is now bank has the obligation to pay when this was someone's savings account or CD account, and then if they when they want to withdraw this money, I mean, it's not from checking account, because checking account is, demand deposit. It has, whenever, they withdraw that, they have to give it up. But then they have to give it out. But then savings account, or, especially CDs, are tied up by the contract for at least 2 years. If you have a 2-year CD, you put money into 2-year CDs. For those, during these 2 years, you cannot withdraw. You can, if you do that, then it's a breach of a contract, and you have to pay penalty. So generally, people who put their money in CDs, they don't need it urgently, so they put it into CDs. Or in the money in the savings account, they are not withdrawn very frequently, so the balance of the savings account remain generally constant over time, so they can loan this out. But when it's time to when the CD matures, I wanna take it out, and the savings account, money in the savings account, if the customer wants to take it out, you have to give it up. But then the bank is in trouble now, because 45% of they got only half back, and the other half, or 45%, they don't have it, right? So this is the onset of the financial crisis in 2008, because the banks don't have that money. But anyway, I digressed a little again, because in 2007, that's what happened.
How do we go back to G? How did we get to G? What was the input for 20?
G is the growth rate. G is
No,
the growth
input,
rate.
The input.
Yeah. It's not.
Divided by V3.
Yeah. This is nothing but the logic, right? This is nothing but the logic. How would you find a growth rate between 2006 and 2005? Huh? It's just annual. It's just annual, but it's basically the same thing as this, isn't it, right? It's just the same thing as this. I mean, this is a holding period return. Holding period, in this case, holding period was 11 years, but in this case, it's simply 1 year, right? So it's the holding period return for 1 year, 1 year holding, right? 1 year holding period. This is for 11 years. But as you can see, this is under scenario 1, because in scenario 1, you didn't rent it out. It was just the this house was your home, and that was just capital gains, or capital loss year after year. Now, or this column F, or that's the return, and the return basically this is the return in scenario 2, right? Then in scenario 2, think about it. The capital gain was, why isn't it working? Okay, the capital gain was this. Right? And then there was, additional cash flow in that year, and you divide it by the price of the house, the previous year. Okay, then you drag it down, and this is what it is. And you may have noticed that these columns H and I, automatically populated when I got. It's because that's exactly the definition I put in there. It says 1 plus G, so I put 1 plus this column, right? And then as I have this column populated, then this column will automatically populate too. This column too. I just go by the definition, right? Just go, and then look. So basically, G and R, they are basically ROI. They are returns. But why this column is called G, this column is called R? Well, this is simply the growth rate in the house value, right? Simply the growth rate, the only capital gains, right? because this is scenario 1. Because it is growth rate, I call, is the return with no, is the return under the scenario 1 where there is no additional income. So it is only purely growth rate in the capital, your capital value, right? And it is called R. This is return because there isn't only growth in capital but also additional income. But they are basically the same concept, and they are different only because there is in scenario 2 there is income. But think about it, for the first 3 years they have to be the same thing, right? For the first 3 years, because for the first 3 years there was no income, right? Makes sense? So then next question is, so how do we annualize this? I told you, you can't simply, take the simple average is not the one. Why? Because if you take the simple average, you will get something like, we all know, I can take, to take average, first, we can do it 2 ways, first, you will sum everything and divide it by the number of data points. Okay, sum everything, and then we know it is 11, right? Number of observation, number of data points, 11. But just to make sure, I will use count, so that if I use count everything in the data range, it will know exactly. It will count 11. Okay. So the reason I do this is because you can of course physically count how many data points. So when you highlight the cell, when you highlight the cell here, right? As I highlight in that small box, you will see it says 11R times 1C. What does that mean? 11 rows times 1 column. So 11 rows means there are 11 data points, right? But physically counting it, if we have a very large data set, it's gonna be you can make a mistake. So to prevent any mistake, if you do it like this, then you will never make a mistake. So, and this is simple average, but it's wrong. Simple average or arithmetic average. I can also copy it to the right. So in case of and if it is you can do it like that, or you can use just the average command. Average is you can just type in average and just highlight this. I get the same result, of course. But then I told you these are wrong. Why? Wrong. Okay. Why? Because this is something that's growing over time. In other words, when something is growing over time, there is this compounding effect. So what is compounding effect? Compounding effect is like snowball. You drop. Did I talk about compounding before?
It's like holding on to a stock too. How you gave us an example of.
No. Did I give you an example of snowball?
Not a snowball. You said apple.
You gave an example of a snowball in your lecture video, like when it goes down a hill or something and it gets bigger. Exactly. You said.
Okay. From this class.
No, your video class, thingy, your video lecture thing.
Oh, from the lecture, yeah. So yeah, then I'm not gonna go into that again. Thank you for reminding me, because it's gonna take another. So because of the compounding effect, you cannot. So then what do you need to do? You will need to take geometric average. So we are almost out of time. So I will just give you the How you find the geometric average? This is how you do it. PT plus n over PT raised to 1 over n minus 1. But steps of derivation, I'm going to talk about that in the next class. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to PT plus n is this, because that's our final price. PT, that's PT plus 11 actually, right? Because PT is 2005 divided by PT. Then you raise it to 1 over n. We know n is 11. N is 11, but I'm not, I can do better. What I'm going to do is, I can use count command, or from 2006, I will subtract 2005. Then that's going to give me exactly 11, right? Okay, so that's going to be 1 over, raised to 1 over 11. That symbol is a universal machine language for raising something to power, right? Then, okay, and then I raise it, and minus 1. And what do I get? I got 11.57. For this, I used, built-in Excel's built-in function called geomean. That means geometric mean. But to use geometric mean, you have to have the data in this form, 1 plus R form, 1 plus G form, right? So unless you have it like that, you cannot use it. But then either way, you can tell, oh, simple average is overstating. Simple average is overstating, right? Simple average is overstating the true average. Okay, so once again, we must, when there is compounding effect going on, we cannot use, and the data, each data points are correlated with each other. 1 year, 2006 is the result of the 2005 growth from 2005, which is the result of 2015, which is the result of 2015, 14, and successively, like that. So they are all correlated. There is, like a snowball effect going on, and then you cannot use, simple average. You have to use geometric average. Okay, so that's it for today. We're already at 3:15, so I'm gonna, we don't actually, next class will be on next Thursday, because we have, the holiday schedule, right? So have a good weekend, everyone, and I will see you guys all back on next Thursday.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay.
You have a great weekend too.
Professor.
All right, you too. All right, let me stop sharing and stop recording. Take care.